So I think there has to be this whole idea of legacy at every generation. I think the conversations have been going on for a while, but I think the practicality of it, the action of it, how do we make this a thing? I think I'm tired of the conversations. We've talked about it too much. We know the problem. The problem's well discussed from not only us, but everyone. So what does it look like practically to do these things that we're talking about?
Welcome to the Faithful Fathering Podcast. This is Rick Wertz, and I just thank you for joining us for this time together. In the studio with me is a dear friend, Mr. Ian Moore. Ian, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely.
We're talking about our favorite subject is fathers, our Father, our Heavenly Father, and fathering. And then, of course, Father's Day month, which is what we're all about, encouraging and equipping you as we build up toward, we celebrate the one day on the third Sunday in June, but we're going to celebrate all month with you to encourage you on the journey. We were talking about passing the baton the last segment, and we've talked a little bit in between the segments here about your son's experience and some of your other videos. Share a little bit more about the effectiveness and the artistry, really, of passing the baton well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my son's a track athlete, decorated in high school, did very well in high school, made it to states in his junior year in the 4x2, did very well. And we would always talk about, the relay race. And he did great in the 200, was, just a great athlete. But think about the challenges of passing the baton. Like, I think from us, from that perspective, it's something that looks so easy. Just pass the baton and keep running, but that's one of the biggest challenges and one of the hardest parts of the race. It's not the race itself. It's not the curve. It's actually passing that baton and actually making sure it gets handed off. Even like the Olympic team, they struggle with making sure the handoff is right. And so you think about that as fathers, sometimes we struggle with that, is passing that baton, like making sure it gets handed off, and making sure we don't drop it. The other thing I thought about, too, is I saw a video, I think it was on Instagram or one of the social channels, but it's a high school, track meet, and they were running a 4x1, and the gentleman was running, had a smile on his face, doing well, but he accidentally crossed into the other lane and didn't even realize it. And so he went to pass the baton, but he went to hand it to the wrong team. And I thought about that, and you saw his teammate. He was upset, obviously, he jumping up and down, like, how, what happened, But from a fatherhood perspective, I think we can get so caught up in chasing the wrong things, chasing the career, distractions. You name it, and
Right.
And then when we go to hand that baton off, we've handed to the wrong thing, and then our kids are left like, "Dad, where are you?"
Right.
So that just, from our pass baton analogy, it just, those two
Staying
things
in your
think
lane,
about it.
and staying married,
Staying in your lane.
staying married, staying focused on the right priorities,
Absolutely.
not getting caught up in the distractions or the deceptions of the evil one
Yeah.
that's always out there
Yeah.
to stir us up and distract us.
Yep.
And you're right, it does that in 2008 Beijing Olympics. Tyson Gay
Yep.
and Lauren Williams were
Yep.
both on the receiving end of a failed exchange.
Exactly.
And boy, that clank of the baton was loud.
It was
and
loud.
clear.
It was loud.
And of course, we're hearing that across society today, aren't we? That we talked earlier about fatherless children, but we're also, as Faithful Fathering focuses on dads in the home, we're trying to encourage and equip those guys that they want to do what's well, but they're so caught up so often in thinking that if financial provision is what we're trying to do, that's what he has to focus on. And before you know it, if you're like me, I turn around and the kids are going to school, and I've missed key junctures and early in their lives to invest in the relationship with them and in their foundational character as kids. So as we talk about that, let's go ahead and move into you're the lead dad at Living Word Church as far as pulling a team together. Talk a little bit about your vision for that team and for dads of Living Word. How do you see Faithful Fathering and that group coming together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, for me, it's all about growth. I've always been big into, personal development. And I always say that, the Bible's the ultimate personal development book. When it comes to development, you can't get any better than the Word of God, So for me, when I think about men, I think about development, right? And I think about guys like me who didn't have a father growing up, like you said, those teenage years. Um, a lot of us are like that. When you kind of ask guys, was your dad around? Most will say no. Others will say yes, but. And it's that but where we get the challenge, right? Yes, he was there, but he was, chasing women, or he was not available, or he was working too much, or, name it. Very few of us have good fathers in our lives, very few. It's almost like you're an anomaly if you had a good father and you were raised in that, household and things like that. So, I know I talked about it earlier about, fatherless children, but there's a lot of fatherless grown men, out here, like myself included, that I still wish I had somebody to say, "Hey, Dad, like help me out with such and such," or and there's a lot of grown men like that. So,
Sure.
um,
And that's largely because they're in an overcomer mode. They're trying to do better than their dad
yeah,
did,
yeah,
which they may in one dimension. Maybe they are a better financial provider, or they're better, but they're still not on the right track, right?
yeah, yeah. And I like what you said earlier, because I think that's part of my story. Really, is that my kids' teenage years, I was so caught on chasing that career, right? I traveled a lot for work. I was gone sometimes 3, 4 days a week, on the road, and missed a lot. There was my middle son, he was a football player. Every year for, his high school career, I missed his last football game because there was a conference that always took place on that last football game. So, and I would joke and say that was probably his best game of his high school career every time, I missed it. So, but both of my sons are great at sports, so, um, but kind of thinking about that whole idea of where the direction of men's ministry at Living Word, there's a couple facets to it. It's this idea of having those older gentlemen disciple guys like myself, 40s, um, still have our families. We're older, we're more established, but we still need some guidance,
Sure.
discipleship. But then there's that, guys like my age discipling the young adults. Is they're becoming young men, they're thinking about marriage, they're being put in college positions where they're being exposed to anything and everything, all kind of false doctrine, women, distraction, and what does that look like? But also the teenagers in our church as well, where the youth pastor there now is we're trying to think through, like, what does a discipleship process look like? So I think there has to be this whole idea of legacy at every generation. And that's, I think the conversations have been going on for a while, but I think the practicality of it, the action of it, I think that's where we struggle. And I think we're trying to put the practicality to it. And how do we make this a thing? I think I'm tired of the conversations. Like, we've talked about it too much. Like we know the problem. The problem's well discussed from not only us but everyone. So, what does it look like practically to do these things that we're talking about?
Right, right. And that's really the purpose. That's how we focus on getting that leadership team together. Because I, from the outside and from the inside, actually, in churches I have worked with, they'll spend bukus of money on student ministry, but we know that a child that comes to Christ in student ministry, 30 to 35% of the time they'll stay in their faith as adults.
Yeah, yeah.
When dad leads the way to church and is involved in the spiritual development of a child, 93% of the time, the child will stay in the faith as an adult. So what do you think, where does that message fall short as far as firing up this team of dads to say, hey, this is kingdom work that we're doing. We got a generation in the balance. How are we going to get on track and getting this momentum in our church so the dads are the dads the kids need to have?
Yeah, there's that. I think that's a twofold answer, right? I think one is just the distraction of life and making the main thing the main thing. I think we know we want to do these things, right? I can't talk to a person and say, no, it's not a good idea to get the men on board and fathers. And like, no one would say, no, bad idea, Ian, we don't want to do this. So it's not that we don't want to do it, but it's like we're too distracted, right? We put things that aren't important and we make them important.
Mhm.
And I think like this whole idea of becoming great men and fathers and things like that, like I think there has to be an urgency.
Mhm.
Like it's hard to watch social media. I was on social media today, and it breaks me like every time. Like it's very hard for me to watch social media and not just be like, wow, because you say like my son, he's saying it in a funny manner, but he really means he's saying like, oh, that's fatherless activities. He's joking, but like when you look at it, it's true. Like
Mm.
when you
Mhm.
see some of these things that are going on, like if dad was in the home, like you wouldn't act like that.
Yeah.
If you were really, maybe you would, but it would be kind of out of character. I mean, we've all done some out of
You'd
character
walk sore
things.
for a few days.
Absolutely, yeah. You think about your actions before, So he has this
Mhm.
this quote. He said, "Dad, those are fatherless activities."
Wow. Wow.
But the other thing too, and it's becoming my passion as of late is health and energy. I think a lot of guys, I think we've lost the energy to do the things we want to do. I say there's 5 words that if I can get these 5 words out of your life, we get much more done. And those 5 words are I don't feel like it. I say this to folks all the time, and that's in everything. It's not that we don't want to do it, but we don't have the energy to do it.
Mm.
And so that's becoming my passion as of late is that
Mm.
making sure I have the energy to provide for my wife, to run my business, to run ministry. I mean, I could easily kick my feet up, but there's work to be done. And the
Mhm.
work typically doesn't get done, not because we don't want to do it, it's because we just don't have the energy to do it. So
Mm.
for me, I think when it comes to ministry as a whole, it's more about do you have the energy to make it happen as opposed to do you want to do it?
Is it the energy or is it the discipline?
Both.
Mm.
I think it's both. I struggle with both, right? Because I think about it as I was just talking to one of my good friends, my prayer partner, my brother. We were just talking about this whole idea of matter of fact, I'll say this. There's a young man I know I have so much respect for him. Gentleman by the name of Mr. Khalil Vincent. And I don't even think he realized he said this to me. He just said it because it's who he was. But he said he just has a great network in the city. He's got a great business, Tech Fest Live, and he's doing some really good things. And I've been kind of a mentor and helping him, in the business space. And I said, man, you got a great network. Like, how do you do it? He said, I just wake up and do what I'm supposed to do every day.
Mm.
And as simple as that statement was, I don't think he
Mhm.
knew how profound it was.
Yeah.
But I said, man, I wish I could just say that about myself, with so much confidence, because
Mhm.
there are times I don't wake up. And I think being a business owner, it's even harder because I don't have to get up and go to a job every day. I have to get up and make things happen. I have to get up and make the phone calls. I have to make the emails. I have to set up the webinars I do. So
Mm.
the discipline and energy, I mean, those are two things that, without either one of those, I mean, nothing happens.
Well, I think just you being here, Ian. I mean, you could have easily said, "No, I don't have time," but
Yeah.
you said, "Yeah, I'll be there." And here you showed up,
Mhm.
and so we're doing what we do naturally,
Mhm.
and the Lord's going to use it, make it supernatural, and
Amen.
however, whatever context He wants to do it to those guys that are listening to us.
Amen.
And I always think of the dad that shows up just worn out after work, doesn't have any energy for the kids. If his best buddy comes along and says, "Hey, I have 2 tickets to the Astros game or the
Yep.
Rockets game or whatever," all of a sudden he's going to find the energy to go,
Absolutely.
right? So
Absolutely.
that goes back to saying, "Okay, I'm going to," I always say, "Suck it up, Buttercup," you know.
That's it. That's it. Suck it up, Buttercup. I say that too. That's funny.
The
Yeah.
sissies need not apply.
Yeah. Yeah.
But well, and what? Tell me a little bit about it. I really respect your perspective on that because I think that's our challenge in ministry in general and particularly on the fathering front.
Mhm.
That we really want to. That's why we're all about encouraging and equipping dads.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
trying to. We're not here to beat guys up.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
get beat up enough.
Hmm.
In fact, the third Sunday of the month of June is usually the Sunday the pastor uses to pick on the dad to tell the dads how sorry they are. I'm being sarcastic there.
Absolutely.
Not every pastor does that,
Absolutely.
but it is a day because they figure that maybe that's the one day, one Sunday Dad's going to be there.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
it's true. It is true. Unfortunately, it is.
mhm.
Yep, yeah. I think about it's funny. We joke about not being able to get reservations on Mother's Day. It's like I book reservations like a month in advance for Mother's Day because I know everything's going to be packed. Father's Day, you just walk in a restaurant. You can just walk in wherever you want. You don't need reservations on Father's Day. You just
Yeah,
show up.
yeah.
Unfortunately,
There's so many analogies to that. The biggest card day, for Hallmark is Mother's
yeah,
Day. The
absolutely.
lowest card day is Father's
Yeah,
Day.
yeah,
That type of
yeah.
deal. But that well, on the when we talk about the past strategy and your vision for the dads of Living Word, the A for the past strategy are just fun activities for dads and kids. What have you done, or what do you think is on the horizon to say, we're going to have just a fun day for dads to engage a little bit, have a little spiritual component, a devotion, but just an easy to engage in deal for dads to come in and just show up.
Yeah, it's a great question because we're kind of working on that now. So we were, typically we do like we meet every third Saturday. That's kind of our regular every month. We meet on the third Saturday, so it happens to fall on Father's Day weekend. So, some guys have already said they're going to be out of town, with their kids, and that's awesome, But we're actually going to do a play on the pass the baton strategy, actually. So I was trying to think of ways to engage, right? I don't want it to be kind of a sit and get, type of event. We do those often, we just
Mhm.
come, we, talk and share and those types of things. And they're great, our meetings are great. But I would like to, have our fathers invite their kids and spiritual kids as well. I think that's one of the things my wife and I talked about in our group is I don't want to exclude teenage boys or girls who don't have their father but would like to participate, right?
Sure,
So if you got a
sure.
spiritual son or daughter, bring them as well. But trying to have some like a game type event like the fathers versus the kids, and we're going to do some relays, we talked about, but we're going to talk about that whole 4x1 event, and the importance of passing the baton. Like, so that'll be kind of the teaching, the spiritual aspect of it. But the goal is to just have some fun, enjoy. I don't know what we're going to eat yet. I don't know if we're going to have some barbecue or I don't know, some burgers on the grill or something. But just the goal is just to have a good time, enjoy each other, but also, understand the importance of passing that baton. So I got some pretty interesting things lined up for that day.
That's the cool thing about dads and kids. It doesn't take a smorgasbord. It's just hot dogs
That's
and
it.
chips will
That's it.
work.
I'm
A little
simple.
bit of ice cream and
That's it. Even when you think about Mother's Day, I got to plan the fancy, and brunches and Italian dinners, and I'm like, just give me a burger and just bring the kids to the house. I'm happy. Like, I just like to like walk around with my kids on Father's Day. Like, there's such pride and joy in just
Mm,
like being a dad and just walking around. Like, I don't need much. I don't
yeah, we're easy.
make me my favorite burger and I'm good.
Yeah, just give me a hug.
That's it. That's it.
Uh, the S in the past strategy is studies for dads. I know you've looked at different things. You're looking at heroes and different things that you're looking at. Is there what has been done as far as studies for dads at Living Word, and or what do you see being orchestrated over the next year?
Yeah, I think it was kind of eye opening the first time we met. We met at Starbucks and we were just kind of talking, and you were sharing, faithful fathering, and and I think you asked the question, what are you guys, doing for the fathers in the church? And as I thought about it, I said we're really not doing anything. I think by default, if you will, men's ministry, we kind of, go into that
Mm,
realm of, in fathering, and we have our marriage ministry, and, part of that is fathering, but nothing specific, for fathers. So we're trying to put together like a small group right now. We're trying to think of ways to make it easy, right? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is how do we, make it easy? How do we, not add another thing,
right, sure.
to the guys, to the men? So we were thinking about we have what's called our life application classes where they're in between services from 10 to 11 in the morning. So was asking our life app lead if we can create like a fatherhood life application class because we have like a marriage group, we have
Hmm.
our different deacon families and things like that. But if we can create a specific life application group for fathers during that time where men are already in church,
Hmm.
it might be a way to just engage men at a different level. So that's
Sure.
kind of what we're hoping to get approved here in the next couple of weeks, and I'd love to introduce it for during our Father's Day weekend.
Very
Amen.
cool. That is the key, isn't it? We don't want to create anything that's. We want to try to mesh into
Hmm.
whatever's
Hmm.
going on right in the church.
Yeah,
You want
yeah,
to complement it.
absolutely.
If it's just not happening, then you're
Hmm.
going to supplement it somehow or another. Find a way to get it in.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
really applaud your initiative on that side. The last bit: has there ever been have you had men's retreats at Living Word or a father-child retreat at all? That's the second S in the past strategy is a weekend getaway. Any experience with that?
So years ago, we had right. So I took over the men's ministry about 3 years ago, and before that, we did do some retreats, and I think we kind of got to like a rebuild, if you will, and
Mm-hmm.
we were kind of starting over. And then we've had guys ask about retreats, but we haven't done any.
Mm-hmm.
We're well overdue. I think when I started, I wanted to kind of get my footing, if you will, and try to get a process, a flow for what ministry looked
Sure,
like.
sure.
We're well beyond that, so we're due for a retreat.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
not only that, but like kind of a men's conference. We've been thinking about
sure.
things like that. So trying to expand on what we're doing. And again, it comes down to that one word: energy. Like it is, we got to have the energy and the manpower to do it. I tell
Mm-hmm.
guys all the time, one thing we don't lack for ideas, we lack for bodies. We need
Right, right.
support, we need help, within the ministry. So tons of ideas, but I'm only one person, and our
Mm-hmm.
team is small but mighty. We got a
Yeah,
cool leadership team, love them to death, but there's only a few of us.
yeah.
And everybody, we got these great ideas, and they say, "Hey," and I'm like, "Well, hey, why don't you, lead that up for me, please?" And I had a guy ask me, 'cause we were kind of doing a sports analogy, and talking about, sports and talking about, being a quarterback of a team. So, well, what does the quarterback need? I said,
Mm-hmm.
uh, guys, like even on the say, if somebody could just make the coffee, I mean, it might sound simple, but it's just one less thing I got to worry about.
Yeah.
I can focus on other things. So we're really trying to build more of a structure.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts with me. From a leadership perspective, is making sure that the structure is in place. And even talking about passing the baton, sometimes I feel like I hold on to much more than I need to.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of got this. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. But meanwhile, I'm burnt out. So
Well,
uh,
that's really the key as a lead dad. It's got to be able to delegate. Stay in
absolutely.
tune, but delegate is. But find somebody that likes to lead studies,
Hmm.
somebody that likes to
Hmm.
coordinate activities, that type of thing. But that's really one of the challenges is to manage all of that well.
Absolutely.
I applaud your initiative and your heart. You're the Joshua and the Caleb beside you. So those other 10 spies they didn't get it right. Navigate through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
well, well, fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit of that vision. What do you, if you were to look at it in 5 years, Ian, what would you like to see come out of your initiative with dads at Living Word?
Wow, wow, that's a great question. When I think about often, because I always like to dream big. I do. It's just who I am, in whatever I do. But I see us serving not only our neighborhood but the city of Houston. At a higher level, and um, we've got so many men in our church. And I think one of our biggest things is how do we engage those men. So I just, as we talk about that word survive versus thrive, I think our men's ministry has survived and now it's time to thrive, right? And thriving looks like, serving at a higher level, more men in attendance, doing things in our neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
in the community, things like that. We kind of kept our men's ministry in house, but I think the goal was to take it more outside the walls,
Mm-hmm.
so that's definitely one of them is how do we not just serve the men in the building, but serve the men who may never step foot in our building, but they still need everything that we're talking about.
And of course, it starts with ministry in the home, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are those phases. We talk about like how do we get the men, in church and then kind of operating at a high level in their home and then engaging other kids. And I just see us doing just some pretty big things. So
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had the answer to what that looks like, but man, I just want to do some amazing things. I want to have some fun with it.
Of course, your bride knows that the secret to a faithful father is loving your bride as Christ loves the church. Once we
Absolutely.
get that down, then everything else will fall into order,
Absolutely,
right?
100%.
Well, dads, you've heard a little bit about passing the baton and the initiative of dads of Living Word, which are representative of a core group of dads that we work to establish when we come beside the church to hand that strategy of pass the baton off, and that's the goal: raise the awareness, encourage and equip men to be faithful fathers. That's a dad that prioritizes physical presence, is engaged emotionally, and leads spiritually by example, because every home should have a faithful father leading in Christ. That's the dad you're called to be, and that's the dad the next generation needs. God bless. Godspeed.